Do you even know how to cook? I mean, Greg is always taking clients out to eat. Usually that's a bad sign. The voice cuts right through the smooth jazz playing from the hidden ceiling speakers. Blake Whitmore. A real estate broker with too much pomade in his hair and a mouth that runs far ahead of his brain. He holds a crystal flute of champagne, tilting his chin toward my end of the long mahogany dining table. Every pair of eyes in the Dallas penthouse shifts in my direction. A few people clear their throats. The air in the room suddenly turns thick like wet cement. My right knee throbs, a dull, heavy rhythmic ache. Titanium screws grinding against damaged bone. A parting gift from a life they know absolutely nothing about. I do not look at Blake, not right away. My eyes automatically sweep to the right. Muscle memory, assessing the room. Counting the exits. 2 heavy oak doors, 1 massive floor-to-ceiling glass window overlooking the city skyline. 6 potential threats armed with serrated steak knives. The smell of overpriced cologne mixes with the heavy scent of charred ribeye. It is suffocating. I sit perfectly still. The ice water in my glass transmits a biting, bitter cold right through my fingers. Fingers covered in thick, faded scars. The table is set with imported white silk and polished silver flatware. The women around me are wrapped in designer dresses, their wrists heavy with diamonds. The men sit in custom-tailored suits, loudly debating golf handicaps and stock portfolios. And then there is me. I am wearing a plain, modest black dress, the standard uniform for a corporate CEO's wife, designed to fade into the background, designed specifically to make the man sitting beside me look larger than life. I look at Greg, my husband, the man I have shared a home with for 2 decades. In the military, when you are caught in the crosshairs, your unit steps up. They lay down suppressing fire. They throw their own bodies in front of the flying shrapnel. You do not even have to ask. You do not have to beg for protection. It is the code. You protect your own. I watch Greg. I wait for him to set his silver fork down. I wait for him to clear his throat, to shift the attention, to say something, anything to shut Blake down. He does not do it. Instead, the corner of his mouth twitches upward. He shrugs his shoulders, his tailored jacket pulling tight across his back. A low chuckle escapes his throat, vibrating in the sudden quiet of the room. He laughs with them. He serves me up on a silver platter. He throws me right under the bus, simply to save face in front of a man who sells luxury condos for a living. Greg chose the crowd. He chose the cheap applause of empty suits over the dignity of his own wife. The pain from that realization does not hit like a bullet. Bullets are fast. This is worse. Enemy fire is honest. It comes at you straight from the front. This is a rusted knife slipped quietly between the ribs by the very person who is supposed to guard your blind spot. Laughter ripples across the dining room. Polite, condescending rich people laughter. They look at me like I'm a broken appliance, a woman who has no value because she cannot properly baste a turkey or host a Sunday barbecue. To them, a silent woman is an empty woman. My stomach twists into a hard knot, but my heart rate stays perfectly steady. 58 beats per minute. I know this because I am actively counting them. It is pure drilled conditioning. When the world catches fire, you do not panic. You slow down. You analyze. I release my grip on the serrated steak knife. I let it drop from my hand. Click. The sharp, harsh sound of heavy metal hitting fine porcelain slices cleanly through the chuckles. The laughter falters for a fraction of a second. I place both of my hands flat on the table. The thick calluses on my knuckles, the rigid, uneven, burned skin on my palms. They look entirely out of place against the immaculate white silk tablecloth. They are the hands of a mechanic, a fighter, a survivor, not a socialite. I take a breath. I pull the air in through my nose, dragging it past my chest, forcing it deep down into the very bottom of my lungs. I take the anger, the sharp humiliation, the absolute disgust, and I lock it all away in a heavy steel box in the back of my mind. I do not yell. I do not throw my iced drink in his smug face. Yelling takes energy. Yelling is exactly what weak civilian minds do when they lose control of their environment. The room is still vibrating with their cheap, hollow amusement. I finally turn my head. I look dead into Blake Whitmore's eyes. I do not look at his expensive suit or his flashy watch. I look right through the soft, sagging fat of his neck and his fragile, inflated ego. I look at him the way a seasoned predator watches a loud, oblivious animal grazing in the open. My stare does not blink. I do not raise my voice. I do not have to. My tone is completely flat, devoid of any emotion, but it carries the sharp, cold edge of a combat bayonet sliding smoothly into a block of ice. Only when it is easier than landing a CH-53E Super Stallion in the middle of a blinding sandstorm. The words drop heavy onto the center of the table. For a single second, nobody breathes. The jazz music seems to fade into the walls. Then Blake snorts. Someone at the far end of the table chuckles. They think it is a joke. They think the quiet, submissive wife who cannot bake a casserole just made a quirky, sarcastic comment about a military helicopter she saw in some late-night action movie. If you have ever sat at a table where people judged your entire worth without knowing a single thing about the hell you have walked through, you know exactly how heavy this silence feels. Do me a favor. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment the word respect down below. Let me know I'm not the only one who has had to swallow their history just to keep the peace for someone else's fragile ego. The laughter continues to echo around me, a sickening hollow sound. I sit perfectly still. My scarred hands remain completely flat on the silk cloth. I watch Greg raise his expensive wine glass to his lips, completely oblivious to the massive shift in the atmospheric pressure. They sit there sipping their imported champagne, chewing their premium beef, smiling their bright, empty, ignorant smiles. They think they are mocking a harmless shadow. They have absolutely no idea that the monster they are laughing at just pulled the safety pin. The laughter in the dining room finally begins to die out. It does not die because these people suddenly realize they crossed a line. It dies because the atmospheric pressure in the room drops. Across the long mahogany table, past the empty wine glasses and the half-eaten cuts of charred ribeye, sits a man who did not smile. He did not chuckle. He did not even blink. Frank Dawson. He wears a dark civilian suit, but you can never really take the uniform off a man like that. He is 68 years old. He carries the invisible, crushing weight of 3 silver stars on his shoulders. A retired Air Force general. He holds a heavy crystal glass of bourbon. The thick ice cubes clink against the rim. It is the only sound left in the room. He stops the glass halfway to his mouth. He lowers it slowly to the table. He leans forward, resting his forearms on the white silk. It is a small, quiet movement, but it carries enough gravitational pull to crush the entire room into total silence. His eyes lock onto mine. Eagle eyes. Sharp, calculating, unforgiving. He looks right past the stupid, modest black dress I am wearing. He looks right through the carefully constructed facade of the quiet corporate wife. He sees the phantom rank pinned to my collar. He sees the dirt, the grit, and the blood. He clears his throat. The sound is rough, like heavy boots walking over crushed gravel. He cuts right through Blake Whitmore's lingering, arrogant smirk. Major Pace. The dining room freezes completely solid. The word drops into the middle of the table like a live fragmentation grenade. Major. The syllables hit the fine china and bounce off the crystal champagne flutes. For a fraction of a second, my heart skips a beat, a hard, painful scratch inside my chest. How many years has it been since someone in this city called me by that rank? How long have I played the role of a silent background prop in Greg's pathetic corporate theater? Blake opens his mouth. No sound comes out. The smug confidence melts off his face. Greg stares at the general, his jaw slightly slack, his brain entirely failing to process the military title attached to his own wife. I do not react to them. I keep my face completely flat. Cold control. I look directly at General Dawson. I give him a slow, measured nod. I respond in the universal language of people who have walked through hell and made it out the other side. Not here, sir. The corner of Dawson's mouth twitches. A bitter, knowing half-smile. He leans back in his heavy leather chair, pulling his hands away from the table. I figured as much, he says. He picks up his bourbon and takes a slow drink. He does not look at Blake. He does not look at Greg. He completely dismisses them. In a matter of seconds, he draws a hard, invisible line in the sand. General Dawson and I are on one side. The rest of the room is on the other. They are locked out. They are civilians playing with expensive toys, and they just realized a loaded weapon is sitting quietly at their dinner table. 3 hours later. The party is over. A sudden Texas storm rolls through the city. Cold rain whips across the dark asphalt of the valet parking lot. The wind bites at my face. I stand under the dim orange glow of a street lamp, pulling the heavy zipper of my coat up to my chin. My right knee grinds with every step. The cold weather always makes the titanium screws ache deep inside the bone. Greg is 20 yards away, arguing with a valet driver over a microscopic scratch on the bumper of his Porsche. He's loud. He's throwing his weight around, using his money as a weapon against a kid making minimum wage. A dark shadow steps out from behind a concrete pillar. General Dawson. He does not carry an umbrella. The rain runs off his broad shoulders. He does not waste time with polite greetings or meaningless small talk. He steps right into my personal space. His hand reaches out. His skin is rough, weathered like old saddle leather. He presses a small, stiff piece of cardstock directly into my palm. We need to talk about Kandahar, 2011. The words hit me like a heavy steel wrench swinging straight into my gut. Kandahar. The Dallas rain disappears. My lungs instantly fill with the thick, choking smell of burning aviation fuel. The air turns to absolute fire. I can taste the metallic grit of desert sand and hot copper blood in the back of my throat. I hear the deafening, catastrophic grinding of torn aluminum rotors tearing themselves apart in the dark. I feel the dead weight of a bleeding mechanic slumped across my shoulders. I look down at my hand. The business card feels heavy, like a block of lead. I flip it over with my thumb. A direct phone number is written in black ink on the back. I look up. General Dawson is already gone, swallowed by the rain and the dark shadows of the parking lot. 2 o'clock in the morning. The storm hammers against the large glass windows of our suburban house. The rain sounds like television static, like the white noise of a dead radio channel. I sit alone in the dark kitchen. The house is completely silent. I am sitting at the cold marble island, perfectly still. The business card is pinched tight between my index and middle fingers. The edges of the paper are sharp. They dig deep into my calloused skin. Footsteps shuffle across the hardwood floor. The heavy refrigerator door pulls open. A harsh, blinding beam of fluorescent light spills across the dark kitchen, illuminating the gray floor tiles. Greg stands there. He's wearing his expensive silk pajamas. He reaches in and grabs a plastic bottle of cold water. He twists the cap off, takes a long drink, and lets out a loud, lazy yawn. Condensation drips from the bottle, running down his wrist. He turns around. He squints in the bright light, noticing me sitting quietly in the shadows. He does not ask why I'm awake. He does not ask what General Dawson said to me in the parking lot. He does not care to know about the ghosts that keep me staring at the wall at 2 a.m. He sighs, shifting his weight onto his left leg. Come to bed, Hannah. You need to let it go. You know Blake was just making a joke, right? Do not make a big deal out of it. The cold water drips from his hand onto the floor. Tick, tick, tick. Just forget it, he adds. He pushes the heavy refrigerator door shut. Slam. The harsh light vanishes instantly. The kitchen goes pitch black again. I sit in the dark. My breathing remains perfectly even, 58 beats per minute. He did not offer advice. He did not try to comfort his wife. That was a command. A cowardly, pathetic demand for my silence. He wants me to erase my history. He wants me to swallow the insult so he can sleep soundly in his comfortable bed without feeling guilty about his own lack of a spine. He wants me to be nothing. My thumb traces the raised ink on the back of the card. Kandahar. 10 years of keeping the nightmares locked in the basement. 10 years of making myself small so my husband could feel big. I place the card flat on the cold marble counter. The silence in the kitchen is absolute. Greg thinks he just put an end to a minor domestic disagreement. He thinks the problem is solved. He does not know that he just handed a match to an arsonist. The house is completely still. 9 o'clock in the morning. The sun cuts a harsh, blinding white line across the kitchen floor. My coffee sits on the marble counter, turning cold. The sudden buzzing of my cell phone shatters the quiet. An unknown number flashes on the screen. I pressed the green button and set the phone flat on the granite island. Major Pace. The voice is heavy, rough, like old truck tires grinding over broken glass. General Frank Dawson. Sir. I say, my voice is entirely flat. The Heritage Council finally pushed the paperwork through, he says. His words echo slightly from the small speaker. Kandahar. Operation Desert Rescue. It is officially declassified. 10 years in the dark, Major. They are pulling it out into the light. We are honoring you next Friday night. My lungs stopped working for a second. 10 years. It took a decade for the government to admit we were even in that valley. That single mission cost me a right knee. It cost 2 of my crewmen their lives. I still see their faces when I close my eyes. Now they want to hand out a piece of polished metal. And Major, Dawson adds. A dark, bitter edge creeps into his tone. You should know the primary sponsor writing the check for this gala. It is Lone Star Corporate, your husband's firm. The line goes dead. I stand alone in the empty kitchen. Lone Star, Greg's company. They sponsor military events for the corporate tax write-off and the cheap public relations photos. They buy their patriotism with company credit cards. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I drive downtown. I push open the heavy glass doors of the Lone Star Executive Suite. The receptionist barely looks up from her screen. I walk straight down the carpeted hallway and push open the door to Greg's private office. He's out. Playing 18 holes of golf with a junior vice president, the room reeks. It smells of stale cigar smoke, expensive leather conditioner, and unearned arrogance. The walls are covered in framed certificates, sales milestones, regional leadership awards, meaningless paper plaques bought with company money to make small men feel important. I walk past his massive mahogany desk. I head straight for the heavy oak filing cabinet in the corner. For 8 years, a single silver picture frame sat on the corner of that cabinet. It was the only piece of my actual life allowed inside his carefully curated world. A photograph taken on the burning tarmac at Bagram Airfield. Me covered in fine brown sand and dried engine grease, wearing my desert combat uniform, standing next to the shattered, bullet-riddled fuselage of my CH-53E helicopter. A visual proof that I bled for something real. I look down at the cabinet. The silver frame is gone. In its place sits a cheap hollow plastic trophy. A molded golden man swinging a golf club. First place at a charity scramble. The fake gold paint is already chipping around the plastic base. I step closer. The air in the room suddenly feels incredibly thin. I reach out. I run the rough, scarred tips of my fingers over the cold oak surface. Right next to the plastic base of his golf trophy there is a perfect rectangular outline in the dust. The exact dimensions of my silver frame. He did not accidentally misplace it. He did not pack it away for cleaning. He erased it. He wiped away the blood I left in the desert so he could display a cheap plastic toy. He traded my sacrifice for a golf swing. My jaw locks. I drop my hand. I turn around and walk back to his desk. I reach out and touch his wireless mouse. The large computer monitor flares to life, casting a harsh, cold blue light across the dark office walls. I open the main file explorer. I navigate straight to the folder labeled Family. My index finger presses down on the plastic button. Click. Hundreds of image files load onto the screen, row after row of digital thumbnails. I scroll down, click, 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 nothing. I scan the files looking for the picture of my promotion ceremony to Major. Gone. I look for the formal photograph of me standing tall in my Marine Corps dress blues. Gone. I search for the gritty, unedited shot of my flight unit from basic training. Erased. Every single piece of digital evidence tying me to the United States military has been systematically wiped from his hard drive. Every rank, every uniform, every scar. Gone. Instead, I see a curated lie. A completely fabricated existence built specifically to stroke his fragile ego. A photo of me wearing a floral sundress standing on our back patio holding a pair of metal grilling tongs. A photo of me sitting quietly in the background at a corporate Christmas party, my face deliberately out of focus, while Greg holds up a glass of expensive wine in the foreground. A photo of me handing him a generic birthday cake. He did not just hide my uniform. He actively designed a completely different woman. He took a combat commander, a woman who held the bleeding severed arteries of dying Marines in her bare hands, and he digitally reconstructed her into a static, harmless prop. A quiet little background character to make his mediocre life look profound. He is terrified. He's absolutely terrified that his wealthy civilian friends will realize his wife has more courage in her shattered right knee than he has in his entire body. He feels small, so he decided to shrink me down to fit his comfort zone. I take my hand off the mouse. I stare at the blue screen. Not a single tear falls from my eyes. There is no sadness left in my chest. Soldiers weep when they lose their brothers in the dirt. They do not cry over the pathetic actions of a coward. My chest tightens. The anger burns hot for exactly 2 seconds, and then it goes completely freezing cold. Ice in the veins. I reach into my coat pocket. I pull out my cell phone. An hour ago, I had drafted a text message to Greg. I was going to tell him about the phone call from General Dawson. I was going to tell him about the upcoming gala. I was going to give him a chance to be a husband. I stare at the blinking cursor on my phone screen. My thumb moves over the digital keyboard. Delete, delete, delete. I erase the entire message. I lock the screen and shove the phone back into my pocket. If my husband wants to play a game of shadows, I will let him. If he wants to pretend I am just a quiet little wife who does not know how to fight, I will give him the greatest stage in Dallas to prove it. I reach out and press the power button on the computer monitor. The screen snaps to black. I turn around. I walk out of the office. I pull the heavy mahogany door shut behind me. The metal latch clicks perfectly into place. The silent campaign has officially begun. Brookhaven Country Club, Saturday afternoon. The Texas sun is brutal, beating down on the manicured green grass and baking the concrete cart paths. The air is thick, smelling of expensive cigars, freshly cut turf, and the unearned confidence of wealthy men. Greg and his business associates are gathered around the tee box of the 14th hole. I stand quietly by the electric golf cart holding a bottle of mineral water. I'm wearing a plain white polo shirt and a khaki skirt. The invisible wife, the silent spectator. Duke Hollander is currently holding court. He is a mid-level investment banker who buys military-grade tactical gear just to visit the indoor shooting range on the weekends. He's leaning heavily on his titanium driver, waving his free hand in the air. I am telling you, these modern pilots have it completely easy, Duke says, loudly addressing Greg and 2 other executives. I was watching this documentary on the Discovery Channel last night about the Middle East. It is all computers now. Fly-by-wire, autopilot. The machine practically does all the heavy lifting for them. It is basically just playing a video game. Greg chuckles. He takes a sip of his overpriced imported beer. He does not know anything about aviation, but he nods along because Duke just bought a second vacation home in Aspen. Back in Vietnam, those guys actually had to fly. Duke continues, his chest puffed out under his tight polo shirt. Today, if the computer fails, these kids completely panic. They do not have the raw instincts. I look down at my hands. The thick white scars wrapping around my knuckles catch the harsh sunlight. I flex my fingers. The joints pop. For 10 years, I have swallowed this garbage. I have stood quietly in the background while men who have never thrown a single punch in their entire lives debated the realities of war. I have let them play their little games. I have let them pretend they are the apex predators of the world just because they know how to manipulate the stock market. Not today. I reach up. I pull my dark sunglasses off my face. The blinding Texas sun hits my eyes directly, but I do not blink. I do not squint. I drop the plastic water bottle onto the seat of the golf cart. I step forward. The crunch of my shoes on the dry gravel makes Duke pause. He turns his head. Greg looks at me, his eyebrows pulling together in slight confusion. He's used to me fetching extra golf tees. He's not used to me entering the circle. I walk straight toward Duke. I do not stop at a polite conversational distance. I step right into his personal space, forcing him to physically lean back against his golf bag. You think flying a combat helicopter is like steering your Porsche down the interstate, Duke? My voice is entirely flat. It does not rise, it does not waver. It cuts through the humid air like a heavy steel blade. The entire group goes dead silent. The clinking of golf clubs stops. Duke lets out a short, uncomfortable breath. His face flushes slightly. Come on, Hannah. I was just talking about the technology. It is a known fact. Have you ever had to auto-rotate a 30-ton machine into a brownout? I ask. I do not let him finish his sentence. I step 1 inch closer. My eyes lock onto his, pinning him in place. Have you ever had to drop a CH-53E Super Stallion into a blinding wall of desert sand with a 40-knot tailwind, pushing you toward a rock face while your right landing gear is blown to completely useless pieces by a rocket-propelled grenade? Duke freezes. His mouth opens slightly, but absolutely nothing comes out. The blood drains rapidly from his face, leaving his cheeks a pale, sickly white. A thick bead of sweat breaks out along his hairline. Because the computer does not fix a shattered rotor blade. Duke, I say, keeping my voice low and dead. The computer does not stop your co-pilot from bleeding to death on the instrument panel. When the alarms are screaming and the sky is raining burning metal, you do not look at a screen. You fly the damn aircraft. I hold his gaze for 3 full seconds. The silence is crushing. Greg is staring at me, completely paralyzed. He looks like a man who just realized there is a live rattlesnake sitting on his front porch. I do not wait for an apology. I do not care about Duke Hollander's opinion. I turn my back on them, slide my sunglasses back over my eyes, and walk back to the golf cart. I leave them standing there entirely emasculated, choking on their own suffocating silence. The next morning, at 7 o'clock, the air is much cooler. I sit in a worn vinyl booth inside a cheap blue-collar diner on the outskirts of Dallas. The place smells of burnt bacon grease and strong coffee. General Frank Dawson slides into the booth across from me. He's wearing a faded flannel shirt. He does not look like a 3-star military commander. He looks like an old mechanic holding onto his last good wrench. He slides a tall glass of black iced coffee across the scratched Formica table toward me. Heavy condensation drips down the sides of the glass, pooling on the table. You are playing with them, Dawson says. His voice is a low rumble. I pick up the glass. The cold bites into my scarred fingers. I am not playing, sir. I am establishing a perimeter. Dawson nods slowly. He reaches over and taps his thick index finger against the front page of a discarded newspaper sitting on the edge of the table. A real enemy is easy to fight, Major, Dawson says, looking directly at me. You see a guy with a rifle, you know exactly what to do. You shoot first. But a man carrying a fragile ego that is a highly unpredictable threat. I take a sip of the bitter black coffee. I do not add sugar. I do not add cream. A man can handle being defeated by a superior enemy. Dawson continues, his eyes narrowing slightly. He can survive losing his business. He can even survive losing his money. But a man like your husband will absolutely lose his mind if he realizes he is just a minor apprentice standing next to his own wife. You are pulling the rug out from under his entire reality. He pulled the rug first, I reply. He erased my photographs. He wiped my files. He tried to delete Kandahar. Dawson leans back. He looks out the diner window at the empty highway. Then you make him eat it. Do not let him hide behind his money. You put him in the spotlight and you let him burn. When I finally return to the large suburban house, it is late in the afternoon. The house is quiet except for the sound of running water echoing from the master bathroom upstairs. Greg is in the shower. He's whistling a cheerful, upbeat tune. He's getting ready for his big corporate gala next Friday night. He thinks he's the star of the show. He thinks he's going to stand on a stage and shake hands with veterans smiling for the cameras while holding a giant oversized novelty check. I walk into the kitchen. I drop my car keys on the counter. There's a large stack of incoming mail sitting next to the sink. Glossy catalogs, credit card offers, and utility bills. Right in the middle of the stack is a heavy, thick envelope. The paper is high-quality textured parchment. It is sealed with a gold-embossed Air Force logo. I pull the envelope out. I run my thumb over the raised golden letters printed clearly on the front. Guest of honor, Major Hannah Pace. My heart does not speed up. My hands do not shake. I am perfectly, completely calm. The kind of calm that only comes right before a devastating airstrike. Greg continues to whistle upstairs, completely oblivious to the world outside of his own reflection. I do not call out his name. I do not walk upstairs to show him the invitation. Instead, I pull open the bottom drawer of the kitchen cabinet. the junk drawer. I slide the heavy gold envelope deep into the back, burying it completely under a messy stack of old electric bills and expired coupons. I push the drawer shut. It closes with a soft final click. The safety pin is officially pulled. The bomb is sitting quietly in the dark. All Greg has to do now is step exactly where I want him to. Dallas Aviation Museum, Friday night. The massive steel hangar is packed with 300 guests. Wealthy donors, local politicians, and corporate executives pretending to care about the military. The air conditioning hums loudly, but the room still smells like expensive perfume and cheap catered food. A decommissioned helicopter sits in the center of the room, polished and lit up like a museum exhibit. Down in the VIP section, right up front, Greg is holding court. He looks the part of the powerful CEO, custom-tailored tuxedo. Slicked back hair, a heavy gold watch catching the ambient light. He's standing with Blake Whitmore and Duke Hollander, loudly bragging about his company's deep commitment to the armed forces. Lone Star has always supported the troops, Greg says, gesturing grandly toward the stage with his scotch glass. It is about giving back, honoring the guys who actually put it on the line. He uses their blood to buy himself public relations. He writes a corporate check to buy a hollow sense of patriotism. I do not stand with him. I stand in the complete darkness of the backstage wings. The air back here is cool and smells faintly of heavy machine oil. I'm not wearing a modest black dress. I'm not wearing a floral apron. For the first time in 10 years, I'm wearing my Marine Corps dress blues. The heavy dark blue wool fits perfectly. The high red collar bites into my neck. The gold buttons run down the center of my chest, perfectly aligned. Pinned to the left side of my jacket is a thick stack of ribbons and medals. The Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Air Medal. I am a ghost. None of Greg's friends know what I look like without a frying pan in my hand. They do not know this version of me. Suddenly, the main house lights cut out. The entire hangar goes pitch black. The low hum of conversation stops immediately. 300 people fall completely silent. A single blindingly bright spotlight snaps on. It hits the center of the wooden stage. General Frank Dawson walks out into the light. He's wearing his full Air Force dress uniform. 3 silver stars gleam on his shoulders. He walks to the podium. He does not smile. He grabs the edges of the wooden stand. He leans into the microphone. When he speaks, his voice echoes off the metal roof like heavy thunder. It is not a speech. It is a sentencing. Kandahar, 2011. Operation Desert Rescue. Dawson pauses. He lets the words sink into the quiet room. Visibility was absolute zero. A massive brownout. 24 Rangers pinned down in a rocky valley taking heavy RPG fire. Command ordered all birds to return to base. The risk was too high. The mission was considered a total loss. I close my eyes in the dark. I can still smell the burning sand. One pilot refused to turn around, Dawson says. His voice drops an octave, cutting deep into the crowd. One pilot took a CH-53E. Super Stallion dropped it through a wall of blinding dust, took a direct hit to the landing gear, and held that crippled 30-ton machine steady while taking heavy ground fire. That pilot saved 26 lives that night, taking a piece of shrapnel to the knee to do it. The crowd is completely breathless. Dawson looks up. He stares directly down into the front row. He looks right at Greg. This event is sponsored by Lone Star. Dawson says, his tone dripping with cold, unmistakable contempt. But the hero of that operation has been hidden in the dark for far too long. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the commanding pilot of that mission. Dawson steps back from the microphone. Major Hannah Pace. The stage manager hits the cue. The heavy black curtains pull back. A second spotlight snaps on, slicing through the dark and hitting me dead in the chest. The light catches the gold rank on my shoulders. I step out of the shadows. The applause starts slow, then erupts. It is deafening. 300 people get to their feet. The sound of metal chairs scraping against the concrete floor echoes like a localized earthquake. The cheering bounces off the high metal ceiling. I walk to the center of the stage. My back is perfectly straight. My steps are measured, perfectly timed. My heavy black shoes click sharply against the wooden floorboards. I stop at the podium. I look down. The scene unfolding in the VIP section is like watching a catastrophic car crash in slow motion. Blake Whitmore is standing frozen, his jaws actually hanging open. The crystal champagne flute slips right through his fingers. It hits the concrete floor and shatters into 100 pieces. He does not even blink. Duke Hollander looks like he is going to throw up. He's staring at the thick stack of combat ribbons on my chest. The same woman he tried to lecture about helicopter aerodynamics at the country club is currently staring down at him in full military dress. And then there is Greg, my husband. His face is entirely devoid of color. It is the pale, sickening white of a fresh corpse. He's gripping the back of the chair in front of him so hard his knuckles are turning blue. All the muscles in his body seem to have completely failed him. The expensive tuxedo, the slick hair, the arrogant CEO persona. It is all stripped away in a matter of seconds, stripped down to the bone. He's not a powerful man making a charitable donation. He's a fraud. A small, pathetic coward who spent 10 years deleting files and hiding photographs because he was terrified the world would realize his wife was twice the man he could ever hope to be. I stand at the microphone. The crowd is still screaming. I do not smile. I do not wave. I do not soak up the glory. I wait for the noise to die down. It takes almost a full minute. When the room finally settles into a heavy, expectant silence, I lean forward. I did not fly that aircraft alone, I say. My voice is calm, flat, and completely devoid of ego. It echoes through the massive hangar. I am here tonight to read the names of 14 combat mechanics and 2 field nurses. They are the ones who held the bleeding together. They are the ones who pulled the dead out of the dirt. I pull a folded piece of white paper from my pocket. I do not tell stories about my own bravery. I do not mention my shattered knee. I read the names of the dead. I honor the people who actually did the heavy lifting. The people Greg's corporate buddies will never think about when they go to sleep at night. The absolute humility of the act acts like a knife driving straight into the arrogant heart of the room. I do not need to brag. The truth is heavy enough to crush them all. I look down at Greg one last time. He's trembling. I did not just ruin his corporate party. I did not just embarrass him in front of his wealthy friends. I just took a sledgehammer to the entire ecosystem of lies he built his life upon. I finish reading the final name. I fold the paper. I step away from the microphone. I do not stay for the handshakes. I do not stay for the photos. I turn my back on the blinding spotlight. I walk off the stage, heading straight for the dark, empty corridor leading out to the parking lot. I pull the heavy white gloves off my hands. It is time to finish this. The applause still thunders behind the heavy double doors of the Dallas Aviation Museum. The muffled roar of 300 people chanting my name vibrates through the thick mahogany wood, but out here in the empty corridor, the silence is absolute. The air conditioning vents above me push a steady stream of freezing air down the long hallway. It chills the light layer of sweat on the back of my neck. The stiff, high red collar of my Marine Corps dress blues chafes slightly against my skin. The heavy stack of combat medals pinned to my left breastplate pulls at the dark blue wool. I stop under a flickering overhead light. I reach for the wrist of my left hand and slowly pull the heavy white dress glove off. I do the same with the right. The cotton fabric sticks slightly to the thick, uneven calluses on my palms. I fold the gloves together into a perfect, rigid square and tuck them under my left arm. I do not feel triumphant. I just feel tired. Fast, erratic footsteps echo from the far end of the corridor. Leather dress shoes slipping and squeaking frantically against the polished marble floor. Greg! He bursts through the heavy doors, letting them slam shut behind him. He is gasping for air, taking in large, ragged breaths. The custom-tailored tuxedo that made him look like a titan of industry just 10 minutes ago now looks like a cheap, wrinkled rental. His silk bow tie hangs completely undone around his collar. His hair, usually slicked back and locked in place with expensive product, falls messily across his forehead. He looks like a cornered animal. A rat caught in the sudden glare of a high-beam flashlight. He stops 5 feet away from me. The smell hits me immediately. Expensive imported scotch mixed heavily with the sharp, sour stench of cold fear. He swallows hard. I hear the dry, pathetic click in his throat. His eyes dart wildly around the empty, cold hallway before dropping straight down to the toes of my high-gloss black uniform shoes. He cannot look at my face. He absolutely cannot look at the medals on my chest. Hannah! He wheezes. His voice shakes. He raises a trembling hand, reaching out toward me before pulling it back. I did not know. It is the oldest, cheapest lie in the world. He wants to play dumb. He wants to pretend the erased digital hard drives, the hidden photographs, and the endless humiliating jokes at country club dinners were just an accident. He wants to play the role of the oblivious, bumbling husband. I do not move. I do not step back. I stand perfectly still and cross my arms over my chest. The metal of my bronze star presses cold against my forearm. I lock my eyes onto him. I do not blink. Ignorance is a liability, Greg, I say. My voice is entirely flat, dead. It echoes off the cold marble walls like a gunshot. It is not an excuse, especially not after 20 years. He shivers. The freezing air from the vents finally hits the sweat soaking through his expensive white dress shirt. The last layer of his protective CEO armor cracks and shatters right in front of me. He cannot hide behind his money anymore. He cannot hide behind his corporate title, his luxury sports car, or his golf club buddies. Out here in the cold, he has absolutely nothing left. His chest heaves, his shoulders cave inward. The ugly, pathetic truth finally vomits out of his mouth. I was scared. He chokes on the words, staring at the floor. I was terrified. If they saw you, if they really saw who you are and what you did over there, they would see how huge you are. They would look at me and they would see that I am just nothing. I am just a guy in a suit. I would be nothing next to you. The confession hangs in the freezing air. It is raw. It is pathetic. He expects pity. He expects the good, quiet, traditional corporate wife to step forward, place a soft hand on his cheek, and tell him that it is okay. He expects me to shrink back down into my designated box to make him feel like the man of the house again. I do not step forward. I do not shed a single tear. My heart rate is resting at a perfectly calm 58 beats per minute. The fact that you felt small does not disgust me, Greg, I tell him. Every word is a calculated surgical strike. What disgusts me is that you spent 10 years trying to shrink me down. You tried to step on my neck and bury me in the dirt just so you could look in the mirror and feel tall. Greg's legs completely give out. He physically collapses. He drops hard onto his left knee. His hand scrambles, his fingernails scratching against the cold edge of the drywall to keep his upper body from hitting the floor completely. The great corporate provider. The wealthy alpha male of the Dallas elite. Reduced to a trembling, broken mess on a museum floor. He looks up at me from the ground. His eyes are red, bloodshot, and leaking tears. Are you going to leave me? He whispers. I look down at him. In the military, deserting your post under fire is a capital offense. You abandon your unit, you lose your honor forever. Greg deserted me a decade ago. He just did it in slow motion, wiping away my history, one photograph at a time. I am currently deciding if I have a single drop of respect left for you, I reply. I do not wait for him to respond. I uncross my arms. I turn my back on him. I walk away. The heavy rubber heels of my uniform shoes strike the marble floor in a sharp, rhythmic military cadence. Clack, clack, clack. The sound echoes down the long, dark corridor, completely drowning out the pathetic sound of his heavy, ragged breathing. There is no cheap forgiveness tonight. There is no screaming argument. There is no dramatic presentation of divorce papers. I am leaving him in a psychological prison of his own making. An indefinite sentence. Tomorrow morning, that cheap plastic golf trophy is going straight into the garbage disposal. Tomorrow morning, the photograph of the Bagram Desert goes right back on that heavy oak cabinet in his office. I spent 10 years hiding my scars in the dark to protect a coward. I am done. He will spend the rest of his natural life walking on eggshells. He will wake up every single day, constantly looking over his shoulder, living in the massive, suffocating shadow of the monster he foolishly tried to bury. Major Pace is back. If you have ever had to cut a toxic person out of your life, or if you know exactly how it feels to finally take your own power back from someone who tried to keep you small, you know exactly how satisfying this moment is. Do me a favor right now. hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment the word power down below. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next story.